Schulz is so convincing for like a second. He's like, I'm not famous. I'm like, wait, do we have a different guy?
He goes, Schulz from the Australian amphitheaters. Yeah?
No, it's Schulz, right? Our friend Schulz got famous.
No, but tell me.
The 17-foot silhouette that walks out on the stage.
The last 15 years.
The guy who comes down on stage like Bon Jovi.
Tell me.
I forget what I was saying.
You were saying that when you're around people that are famous.
You almost don't look right in those rooms no more. I watched you on stage at that roast, and I said, look at all these peons never sold out the Garden. I said, look at all these peons. I said, Andrew Schulz doing these peons a favor, standing on stage with a bunch of motherfuckers who never sold out the Garden twice. I was like, look at him still keeping it real to the...
So when it comes to stand-up comedy, a lot of people and a lot of comedians will argue that the best way to consume it and that the only real way to judge someone's comedy is to watch them perform it live on stage. And for the most part, I would agree, except that for the past 5 years or so, the whole comedy scene has been getting so flooded with podcasts and social media comics. And because they are able to sell a lot of tickets and they have a massive social media audience, a lot of people do include them in the conversation when it comes to talking about who the best is at stand-up comedy at the moment. And when it comes to Andrew Schulz, not only is he the biggest and most successful Rogan Sphere comic, but for the past couple of years, he has been at the forefront of showing everyone, all the comedians, how they can leverage their social media, their podcast, and their friendship or relationship with Joe Rogan in order to sell a massive world tour and have a successful comedy career.
Yeah, because like for me, like when I first started doing the YouTube thing, like I just couldn't get on Comedy Central. I couldn't get on Netflix for whatever reason. Like they just weren't giving me a shot. And I had like good exposure on like MTV and these types of things, but I guess they just, I guess maybe it was like my brand of comedy or whatever. I hate that fucking term, but like, I guess they were like a little bit concerned. Like, okay, here's this white guy. He's going to be making fun of a bunch of different like people that don't look like him. And then I remember I was like, all right, well, fuck it. I'll just put some stuff out on YouTube. And I put out a special on YouTube. It wasn't even a special. It was 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But it was like 4 different clubs in New York City, and I did it all in one night, and like the cab rides in between.
Sure.
And it was just like a fun little thing. And I remember like the week after, I was at like the San Diego Comedy Company or something like that.
Yeah.
You know that club?
Yes, yeah.
And I sold it out.
Nice.
And I'd never sold a club out.
You're like, holy shit.
And I was like, that's weird. I was like, maybe this is like one of those clubs that like people just come out no matter what. And I did another club. I did like the Funny Bone or something like that in like Columbus. And then like that one was sold out. And I was like, what the is going on? So I started like asking people after the show. I'd be like, hey, how did you find out about the dinner? Like, oh, I watched your thing on YouTube. And I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then I did like a week of stand-up on YouTube for a year.
Oh,
so
wow.
every week I put a new clip out for a year.
Wow.
Now, to be fair, Andrew Schulz did have the best crowd work material on the internet. And at some point, the Flagrant podcast was one of the best podcasts out there. However, it is very clear that now the massive success and the money has completely changed them. And also, it's very obvious that Andrew wants to be more like Joe Rogan and is following that blueprint because he has been changing his content to appeal to a broader audience, which is fine, I guess. Nothing wrong with that. But funny enough, the Flagrant podcast has been getting some negative feedback and some criticism, mainly, because of how much the podcast has changed in the direction that it's heading into. And the excuse was always that Andrew Schulz was out there touring, doing comedy, and that's understandable. However, I recently saw him live for the live tour, and after watching his new sets, his new hour, I was completely shocked at how much his stand-up comedy actually changed because it's a complete night and day difference from his last comedy special, the infamous special, and his new comedy now is absolutely different.
Yeah, this is a great time for comedy, man.
Yeah.
I think it might be the best time ever.
Of course.
Really do. I think this is legitimately the golden age of comedy.
We're in it.
And this is also when, like, Ari said it best. He's like, comedy's dangerous now because it's fun because comedy's dangerous again.
Yeah.
Because... like there's so many people that want to restrict what people can and can't talk about. That's unique.
I feel like the restriction is less now.
Really?
Yeah.
Right now, currently.
Like in today, I feel like we can kind of say anything.
As opposed to like 2 years ago.
5 to 2 years. Like now you're like, oh shit, this joke is wild to say.
Well, it's also people are wanting you to go out there. They get excited, like when you did that Diddy bit.
Yeah.
Like people wanted you, they wanted you to go out there. They're like, oh, he went right in there. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I remember I got to LA a day early and I was trying to like work out some like local stuff because sometimes it's fun to just, you know, you're in a city you like, and I was at the store and I was bombing my ass off with local shit. Every local joke I tried to do just bombed, and I was like, what the fuck am I going to talk about at the forum? Like everything I try, and I thought that they were like aware that like the city was, you know, in a different state than it used to be. And I'm trying to write all these jokes about like what's happened to the city. And people in LA don't really feel the city's changed that much. That's like an outside perspective. And I remember I was just in the green room. I'm just like, maybe the joke is about Diddy. That's the only thing everybody's talking about. That's all it's on our minds.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
But the tide changes before. Like the cancel culture shit and like saying whatever you want to say was done maybe like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I don't know, like a year ago. It's maybe 2 years ago it started to change. Maybe like a year ago, it's really like, okay, we're pretty good. But that was the moment I think that like everybody realized, oh, okay, you could say whatever you want now.
And now looking back, it is really interesting that the conversation around cancel culture would conveniently change depending on what Andrew's marketing strategy was for that year. For example, back in 2019, the whole narrative was that Netflix was dead and that comedians did not need mainstream media in order to have a successful comedy career. But then in 2020, he actually got a comedy special on Netflix, which came from the whole turn your phone sideways thing. And then the narrative became, okay, we can work with the mainstream media and the streamers, but they're actually trying to censor us. So now we don't want to change the comedy, so we're self-releasing on our own website. However, for the past year, Andrew Schulz has been pretty much claiming that the whole censorship thing and the whole cancel culture thing is pretty much done and that anyone can say whatever they want. And it might be true to an extent, but even if that was the case, even if that was 100% true, it doesn't make any sense that for the past 2 to 3 years, Andrew Schulz was pushing the narrative that he was fighting against censorship and cancel culture. And now that, according to him, it's no longer an issue, like anyone can say whatever they want, why wouldn't he want to push and top what he did last time on the infamous comedy special instead of, you know, completely switching his comedy to a more family-friendly or a style of comedy that's a little bit safer?
We're just having the best time here in Austin. So it's funny because it like translates. Derek moved. He's a Comedy Store guy, moved to Austin, one of the first guys to move here. Derek, then me, then Gillis, then Schulz, who blew my mind watching his stand-up. Like he's talking about his actual life and having his first kid, and it's so much smarter. And it made me feel like a kind of a hack because I'm up there talking about trans school shooters and did the sub that went down to the Titanic and all this, and I'm like reaching for anything in the world that I find dark and funny, and he's up there talking about his actual life killing, and I'm cracking up to where like, holy shit,
that's awesome.
It's hard for me to laugh at comedians talking about raising a kid and this and that and what about the wife and da.
But it's a really good.
And then he brought up Post Malone, and the whole time you're looking
Post
at this,
talk about.
Oh, no, the crowd went ballistic and he smashed, and then we brought up his dad, who it was his birthday, and I got a few roast jokes off on him. And
because once again, I did see Andrew Schulz live recently for the live tour, and now that the tour is coming to an end, and after seeing that what I saw, the material that I saw was the same thing that he did at MSG, which is completely wild, I thought it would be a good idea to give you a quick review and some thoughts on Andrew Schulz's new hour and new material, and how it's a complete 180. It's a night and day difference from his previous material, the infamous comedy special. And obviously there will be spoilers, and I'll give you a quick one right now, which is that Andrew Schulz pretty much went from being a comedian that was trying so hard to be perceived as an edgy comic that people were trying to censor, to now going down the Bert Kreischer route of doing a full hour of storytelling with some jokes here and there. Now, to be honest, I wasn't really planning on making a review before I went to the show, simply because I've mentioned this before, but I've also seen Tony Hinchcliffe live a few months ago, and even though his set wasn't the most creative or had the best jokes, it was a good show and I had a good time, and I can appreciate that it was straight comedy from Cam Patterson, David Lucas, and then finally Tony Hinchcliffe. The whole time it was just jokes and comedy.
Getting the sunshine, having fun every night. I mean, this mothership thing, you know, I don't have kids or anything, and I live right? I live downtown in a high rise, so it's like I just have fun all the time.
Oh, your life is perfect.
Phones are locked up, so I can literally say anything I want. So that's what I'm in it for. You know, I'm not in it for, you know, being a mainstream star or anything. Like I just like you know,
going for it, saying shit.
Yeah, like the other night I did a joke. Long story short, I did a joke about I had a gun in my mouth, right? And the crowd laughs at the end of the joke. I don't want to give it away. And then as the laughter's going down, some lady in the crowd goes, "Oh no!" And I'm like, "What's your problem, lady?" And she goes, "I don't like jokes about guns in mouths. My dad himself that way." I go, "Lady, I've known you for 8 seconds, and I know exactly why he did it."
It's so fun.
And it's like things like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a moment. It's just a glimpse of the other night. And it's like, is
so
there anything more fun in the world than being like in the moment and getting to do whatever you want?
And I was really expecting something very similar from Andrew Schulz because, you know, if he's been ignoring the podcast or doing it on autopilot and, you know, saving bits that could be told on the podcast to tell them on stage, then you would think that seeing him on stage, seeing him live, would be the best way to consume Andrew Schulz. And, you know, I went there and it wasn't. For example, this past week has been absolutely insane and unreal here in the States. And pretty much everyone has already talked about what happened with Trump. However, if you take a look at the Flagrant podcast, yesterday they did upload an episode, but it was a banked episode with some YouTubers from the UK. And this is pretty wild, but if they keep banking episodes, they will be the next Two Bears, One Cave. And also, before we get into the actual material and the jokes, I did want to say that in my opinion, the reason why Andrew Schulz completely changed his stand-up comedy, it's not because he matured or became a dad, at least in my opinion once again, but instead it's because for the past 2 years, for the past couple of years, he has become so massively successful and rich that not even actual comedians, smaller comedians can relate to him, not even his own best friends. And so because of that, he's not really part of the comedy scene anymore and can't really talk about anything else besides the tour or his family, very similar to what Bert Kreischer went through.
Nice. How do you feel, Schulz, man?
Tired.
Big weekend for you. You sold out Madison Square Garden twice.
Yeah.
Then you flew to LA to do the roast of Tom Brady.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel really good, man. I feel really good. After Madison Square Garden, I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I feel very fulfilled. Just not something I've felt that much in my career. You know, I think that is the one time when you have big dreams. Like a lot of times, it's you focus so much on like what you want to accomplish and not like what you've done. So sometimes you feel like you're not accomplished. You know.
Yeah.
And just maybe unfair to yourself, but like after MSG, that was the only goal I really had in stand-up comedy. I was like, I just want to sell at Madison Square Garden, and if I do that, then I've reached the mountaintop, in my opinion. And yeah, I was even sitting on the roast there, and I was just like on the dais, kind of looking around. And I was like, I don't even care how this goes. Like it was just like, and I'd never felt that. Like everything I'd done in my career up to that point was like, oh, they're gonna discredit me for everything if this doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But after that, after MSG, it was like that was what I created in my head as the mountaintop.
You almost don't look right in those rooms no more. I watched you on stage at that roast, and I said, look at all these peons never sold out the Garden. I said, look at all these peons. I said, Andrew Schulz doing these peons a favor.
Okay, so now let's get to the material and the show itself. And, you know, to be fair to Andrew Schulz, he did at some point in some podcast episode of the Flagrant podcast say that his new material was about what he went through in his personal life. And also, you know, it is pretty normal for comedians to change their comedy, their sets, and all that stuff as they grow older. But when it comes to Andrew Schulz, the change was so quick. It's a night and day difference from just last year or a few years ago, which was the whole infamous comedy special and him painting the narrative that he was so edgy and so controversial that he couldn't even be on the major platforms. And funny enough, in a way, it's kind of similar to the whole Matt Rife situation, because Matt Rife became massively popular with those crowd work clips of him essentially flirting with women and being very, very good at it. And once he became a massive comedian and sold out a world tour, then he tried switching his material to try to pander to a different audience, which is a male audience. And with Andrew Schulz, he also blew up with the whole crowd work clips, the crowd work special on YouTube, his edgy comedy, the whole narrative about him trying to be censored. And then when he blew up and became massively successful, now Netflix likes him and he's known by a lot of people. Now he has changed his material to essentially please the new audience who is just happy to see him live and became a fan very recently, instead of trying to please the older fans who are potentially looking for, more edgy comedy or better jokes. And by the way, if you made it this far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I have to be honest with my feelings, okay? Here's the reality, okay? I feel like Michael Jackson touched those kids, but I also feel like he didn't touch enough kids for me to stop listening to his music. I do feel that way. I'm not proud of that, but that is the way I feel, okay? You could probably feed him 10, 12 more, and I'm gonna keep listening to that shit. Every single time it comes on. Do you remember? No, I don't. Not at all. Keep on going, Mike. Do your fucking thing, okay? So we're at Crate and Barrel, right? I'm just wandering around. I look over my left shoulder. I see this Middle Eastern dude standing on this carpet. Now, I don't say anything, okay? I'm not gonna say a single fucking thing. I just looked over and went, that's the best I could do. That's knee jerk, that's a reflex. I see a Middle Eastern dude on a carpet, I'm gonna chuckle, dude, I'm sorry. I gave it a and I shut it down real quick, okay? Because that guy is there just so he could furnish his apartment. It doesn't matter that I think he's about to take off on that fucking thing. Is that yours right there, bro? Latina? Okay. You gotta be careful with her. You on birth control? Maybe, maybe not. Now, you need certified yes from them, okay? Don't f with that pull-out method with Latinas. You on a Latin girl's stomach, her belly button just opens up and takes that shit in, dog. Like hungry, hungry hippos in there, dog. You gotta come on her back. That's why they call them wetbacks. Now, guys, everybody, we're just getting started, guys.
Because huge spoiler coming up in 3, 2, 1. But the entire premise of Andrew Schulz's new hour, the whole hour is him pretty much telling the story about him and his wife trying to get pregnant and, the difficulties that they went through and how, because of their struggle, they had to rely on a medical procedure in order to make that happen. Obviously, he tells the whole story of him getting tested, going through some difficulties and, some jokes here and there. For example, one of the jokes or one of the stories was about him trying to, relieve himself inside of a cup so that he could get tested. And obviously the nurse was a hot woman with an accent and, the whole interaction between them. And you can kind of imagine where that goes. He also mentioned how the doctor at some point asked him about male or female. And then Andrew Schulz responded with, so there are two genders. And it was a pretty simple joke, but what made it funny was that some random dude in the crowd just randomly yelled and was way too excited for that joke. And then the final joke, the closing bit, besides him showing a picture and a video of him and his wife at the hospital, the final bit was him telling the story about how at some point in the process, the doctor had to explain how they have to choose the good swimmers versus the bad ones, and how once they choose the good ones, they freeze them and then, they become available and whatever. And naturally, Andrew Schulz brings up the question of, where do the bad ones go? And the joke ends up with something along the lines of, somewhere out there in the sewer, in the ocean, there's a small village of, mutants or whatever. Yeah, I'm not doing it justice, of course. That's not the point. The point is that that story was pretty good. That ending was pretty good. It was an okay joke. And look, once again, to be fair, it is a good story. I'm happy for Schulz. And if you're a massive Andrew Schulz fan, of course, you'll enjoy the show and the story. But, if I had known that the show was going to be about that the entire time, I probably wouldn't have gone, if I'm being honest. I mean, I would still pay for it if he released it on a special episode, podcast episode or whatever, because to be honest, I get it that you want to save that big story for the stage, but it could have very easily been a podcast episode, and it would have been a good one, very personal.
Anyway, listen. Thank you guys, everybody who came out to there's a lot of people that came out to the Life Tour, which is really about the whole process. It's why it's called the Life Tour. But about trying to get pregnant, and a lot of people would DM me afterwards, and they would like wish us best of luck, and they would like pray for us, which was, I'm not a very religious guy, but for whatever reason, really means a lot when people who are religious offer to pray, and we really needed everything. All the help that we could have gotten. That meant a lot. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who came out and everybody who's been supported through that process. And also people who kind of kept this a secret, as I know it seems weird to talk about it on stage, but also not really want it to be out there.
I think when we discussed it on the call, someone brought up a good point, which was like you were talking about something that you had gone through, but you hadn't had the baby yet. And you already said everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. And I would be like, I don't want to jinx anything.
Bro, I was so terrified of jinxing it. But even on stage, we had an agreement, my wife and I, we wouldn't talk about getting pregnant until the baby could survive premature birth. So I think after maybe 6 months or something like that, the baby can.
Okay.
So I didn't confirm on stage up until then that she actually got pregnant. It was like, okay, we're trying, and hopefully everything will go well throughout this process. And so we're just so fucking scared. I mean, I don't know, you get superstitious.
Oh, dude, the miracle of childbirth. As you get older, you realize that it is a fucking miracle.
It's a miracle.
And look, once again, I understand that it's a very personal story about a deep struggle that Andrew Schulz went through. And most people might not relate to that because, everyone's out there going crazy, having a lot of babies. While there are people that actually struggle, and it's pretty sad. However, in terms of comedy and in terms of it being a show, it does feel a little bit like false advertisement, or a little bit like it's a little bit misleading, because hear me out. Whenever a comedian puts out a comedy special, usually that comedy special is like an advertisement for what their comedy is like. So that way, if people see it on a platform or TV or whatever, they know what their comedy is like, and so they know what to expect if they see them live. And when it comes to Andrew Schulz, he spent the past 2 to 3 years building the narrative that he was so edgy, that he was a comic that was so, pushing the line so much that his comedy couldn't be on the mainstream platforms. And he sold an entire tour on the back of that. And if you buy a ticket and see that it's completely different from that last comedy special, again, it's a little bit weird. And also, for example, if you see the clips or the videos that he posts online on his social media or on YouTube, that material, it's not what he's doing on his new hour on the live tour. Those clips are specifically made for social media. So, it's very clear that he knows which shows he will be recording those clips at. They turn on the lights so you can see the crowd, and they have the cameras rolling. But he doesn't do that material or anything similar to that in any other show, I'm assuming. I mean, I didn't see any of that when I saw him live. It was straight the 1 hour, very specific 1 hour of the storytelling.
Like, I don't know if you've went through times in your stand-up career where there wasn't something you wanted to share. Did you ever go through stretches like that?
Yeah, you have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're young.
Yeah, and it's like, there was times where I felt like I talked about all the things. And I had before this last hour, I was like, man, what do I want to say? All right, I did the thing about abortion. I've done the thing about trans. I did all the things. And I'm like, I don't want to just be grabbing at a topic. I want to really feel strongly about something. And
actually be interested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I took a little bit of time off before I actually felt something. And the funny thing is, when you feel strongly about something, it pours out. It's not hard. The jokes might not be good at first, but you can't wait to tell them and figure them out.
Right.
Trying to figure out a joke you don't care about is a job.
Yeah.
It's not an art. That's a job.
Yeah.
But when you care and it's fun and it's exciting and the stakes are fucking high and it could fuck up, that I want to get on stage. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Give me another spot. How do I work
And you
this out?
try to figure it out in real time in front of a group of people. And you have to elicit a specific response from them. It has to be humor.
For example, when it comes to someone like Joe Rogan, I think we can all agree that he's not the best stand-up comic. However, his comedy is very consistent. His material is always very consistent because, you know, I was a huge fan back then when I would never miss an episode of the podcast, and I've also seen his entire catalog of stand-up comedy, and it's, you know, mostly stoner takes, a lot of political takes, and it's pretty interesting. You know, it's not the most mind-blowing bits in comedy, but it's pretty good. Now, if on the next comedy special that he's releasing on Netflix, if he told if the whole material was him telling the story of him opening the mothership or his move to Texas specifically, like the whole story was about that, then you would be like, what the like, that's completely different. And by the way, of course, there's nothing wrong with a comic making their entire acts about their family. Of course not. I mean, a lot of comics do it. Louis C.K. has a lot of bits about his daughters and the whole situation with his ex-wife. But when it comes to Andrew Schulz, man, I'm about to sound like a straight up hater, but when it comes to Andrew Schulz, it feels less like he was trying to come up with the best material that just happened to be about the process. And instead, it feels like he carefully crafted, and he's very good at this, but it feels like he carefully crafted a way to have the entire world, his entire fan base, celebrate him.
I'm like, there's only one, I'm not even joking. I was like, there's only one person up there who probably can do that.
Kev.
And that's Kevin Hart. And he's done it. I'm sure Kevin's done it. Kevin's done it. He's the only person. There's not a
Tony Hinchcliffe is doing his Kill Tony show. It's like the biggest show on the internet. They're doing it at MSG this summer.
Oh, they are. Okay. Did it sell out though?
Yeah, I think they've sold it out.
No, let's not give them that.
No, I think I think they've sold, because I know they have 2 dates. So I think they've sold.
But it's
them
not stand up though.
It's like
it's a live podcast.
A show that had that has stand up components. It's different than doing stand up.
By the way, I love Kill Tony.
Show,
I love Kill Tony. Only seen one episode.
Yeah.
And that's the episode where they pissed Donnell Rollins off
you
and walked
loved
him
every
off.
second
Goats to me. You made Donnell Rollins walk off and got him pissed off. Y'all are goats to me, Kill Tony. Okay. All right.
It is a great show. Y'all should check it out. But yeah, dude, it was, man.
And then you bought out 50 Cent for the first night.
That was so crazy, man.
I love seeing the enthusiasm. First of all, we know 50's a comedy guy because 50's a funny dude himself. I like seeing the enthusiasm that 50 Cent has for Andrew Schulz. And I think that's what creativity does, right? When you see somebody take their career in their own hands, do things their way, and achieve something like that, it inspires you.
Yeah.
And you can tell 50 Cent is inspired by what you're doing at the Garden. I mean, I'm inspired. You know what I mean? But you could, for him to come to fucking New York.
It was crazy.
And he did a show. He did a mini concert.
Bro, that was the cool, like doing all the hits.
For example, the way that the show was set up was very different from any other show that I've seen. Now, you could argue that he's just trying to be different and provide more value to the people that see him live. That's fair because, you know, as soon as you walk into the venue and actually see the stage, the whole show, the way that it's set up, it's completely different from any other stand-up show that I've seen. Usually when you walk in, there's music playing, but it's pretty chill. You know, you sit down, settle in, and then wait for the show to start. But with Schulz, as soon as you walk in, it's a lot of energy. It's like loud music, screens, and it really elevates the energy to a whole different level. It's hard to explain. I know it sounds silly, but for a comedy show, it's a lot because it builds up a lot of hype. And then when the comedians come on, it's great. It's great comedy. I'll get to the openers in a second, but it doesn't really match to what Andrew Schulz, the material that Andrew Schulz was performing. Like, I understand when he did it for the infamous comedy special. I mean, it was a taping of the show. It was a huge deal. But when it comes to that, the material was somewhat consistent to the energy of the comedy special. But with this one, it was a little bit strange, getting all the hype going and then having to listen to a story about him trying to get pregnant. It's just odd. Again, I might be wrong, and it could be the case that he has become a better comedian because he can talk about his family and make people laugh. That's the argument that a lot of people are saying.
You don't have to be Italian to get this. You could be Indian, you could be Puerto Rican, black, whatever you are.
Yeah.
If you have like a family and a dynamic in your family, I use my father as a big source of comedy. I think people relate to it regardless of what background you're from. Yeah, it is an immigrant story.
Yeah.
It has those immigrant, little innuendos that maybe some immigrant families could relate to more than others, but at the core, it's just a family. And you know where I really was debating on putting a bit in my Aren't You Embarrassed special about going to an Italian wedding. I felt it was too specific.
Oh, really?
I go, only Italians are gonna get this. Should I put it in? But I decided to put it in, and that little bit started to generate some popularity. I go, oh wow, people are gravitating towards my personal story, my culture, my father. Let me dive into this a little bit more, because up to that point it was about Ross for Less, Subway, just generic.
It was generic, observational, but very funny. And then your character shined, your personality shines through it. But once you started getting really specific about what you were going through.
So now let's talk about some of the positive things about the show, because again, if you're a fan of Schulz, it's very likely that you'll enjoy the show and like the comedy. But for example, if you saw him on the roast of Tom Brady or seen the infamous special or the clips and think that it's going to be similar material, just know that that's not the case. And also, it is nice that they don't lock your phone up like Tony Hinchcliffe does. Now, it's understandable, because now that I've seen both of them, with Tony Hinchcliffe, the entire time it was just straight jokes, and some of them were pretty offensive, and I could see how someone, could get offended if someone leaks their set online. So I kind of get it, but with Andrew Schulz, I mean, the entire material was so clean that there's really no risk of it getting leaked. And also, in my opinion, the show goes on for a good amount of time. I know some people were complaining that it was too short, but I think it goes on for 2 hours max, and I think that's pretty good. And also, I do appreciate that Andrew Schulz has some local jokes, meaning that, he asked around or did some research, which is pretty cool. And the openers, I was pretty happy with the openers. In my opinion, Derek Poston was the best one of the nights. I actually think that he should be going on second, and Mark, who is one of the co-hosts for the podcast, the Flagrant podcast, should be going first, because Derek Poston does about 10 to 15 minutes. Killer set, does it very, very well. Opens up the show, and then Mark goes on for about 20 to 25 minutes, and it's okay, but it's not the best in my opinion. I think Derek is definitely the better comedian. And then it gets really weird, because the way that Mark brings up Andrew Schulz is very, very unique, because as soon as Mark was done with the sets, he started introducing Andrew Schulz and began by asking people to please not record, which makes sense. That's pretty standard. But then he tells the crowd that the whole show is about energy, and how the more energy that the crowd gives Andrew Schulz, the more energy that he will give them back, which is just a strange way of saying, be nice and please laugh. And the weirdest thing was that Mark actually introduced Andrew Schulz as the best comedian in the world, which it's silly. It doesn't matter. It's his show. It doesn't really matter. But I have heard other comics like Shane Gillis or I think Bert Kreischer talk about how they don't like whenever somebody brings them up as the best comedian or whatever, because of the expectations that it sets for the audience.
You gotta stop complimenting people so hard on intros.
It seemed like it worked out.
He survived that.
It seemed like he just got a standing ovation.
No, I know. No, it wasn't for your intro.
Well, I know it wasn't from the intro.
No, I'm saying it's tough. You can't. When you bring someone out, you can't go, this guy is the next big thing. You're going to remember this forever.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of pressure.
And I have to agree with that, because when I heard that, I was like, okay. Like subconsciously, I was like, okay, I'm about to see the best comedy I've ever seen in my life, which is a little bit unfair, because I'm pretty sure he's just saying it to be nice to Schulz. I don't know whose idea it was, but, I think again, subconsciously, it did make me have higher expectations. And so then when I saw the actual material, it was clear that he hadn't been working on that for that long, or that it wasn't his best work.
He's so fun, man. He's my favorite person to watch ever.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I think I mean, there's great comedians.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like who's the GOAT because I don't like it. I don't like to talk. I think we're very fortunate today that we have guys like Chappelle and Attell and Shane and you and everybody and Tony. Schultz. Schultzy's killing it right now.
God.
Murdered on that roast.
That
oh
guy.
My God.
That dude.
Oh my God. He's so likable too. Even when he was shitting all over Dana White, he's got a big smile on his face. He's laughing. Oh my God, he's funny. And he's a great person too, man. He's a great person, like a great human being.
I look at him like an actual big brother, man. That
He's
guy
a beautiful
my
person. I love him to death. But it's like we're real fortunate that we have all these people together.
Built this team, you built all these friends, this community, but when you're on stage,
It's all you.
just you.
It has to be you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those people also help you get better. Like when I'm doing shows and Shane Gillis is on the show and Ron White and Brian Simpson.
Yeah, you
and
put strong
Hinchcliffe
guys
and
on,
Derek
man.
Posey.
Yeah.
And I'll go on stage an hour and a half into that,
Dude,
too.
how funny is Derek, man?
Derek is so good.
Derek has grown so
He's
much.
grown
man.
so
Oh my
much.
God,
and
dude.
being at the club, like he's
Oh,
doing
I
so
know.
many sets.
Yeah, he's so
just
grateful,
He's
man.
going little boy, fat
Yeah.
man. He's going back and forth to the rooms. He's
Yeah.
doing all these sets on the road with you.
Yeah. And he's
doing
a true like team guy. Like he comes from sports in that way. Like he wants the show to be great.
Yes.
He wants to. I
But
mean,
he's a
just,
great human
He's a
being.
f***ing great.
He's
dude.
a gem of a human
Yeah,
being and
yeah.
a happy
Yeah.
sweetheart of a guy. Everybody loves Derek.
He's so grateful for you, man.
Now, when it comes to Derek Poston, even though, yes, he did a very short set, 10 or 15 minutes, which is way easier than what Andrew Schulz and Mark did, it does make sense why he was way better than both of them, because he is still very involved in the whole comedy scene. He's in Austin. He's around a lot of different comedians, and he is working out very frequently. For example, at the Comedy Mothership, whereas someone like Andrew Schulz has completely gone away from that and just abandoned the clubs and the whole comedy scene. And now, instead of trying to come up with better jokes or better material, it's clear that he's just performing for a very specific audience, which is his own audience. And that is exactly what Bert Kreischer does. Now, when it comes to Bert Kreischer, we have mentioned this before when talking about his comedy specials, but the people that see Bert Kreischer, they know what they're getting when they buy the ticket. You know, it's a party guy that takes his shirt off and tells a machine story and some other jokes, and also talks about his family and all that stuff. It's a very safe product, in my opinion. I don't think it's great comedy, but I understand why people like him. Also, Bert Kreischer has been branding himself as the party guy, as the fun guy, and he has been living up to it, you know, in his own world. He's very successful, and he is still doing what he is known for. Again, when it comes to Andrew Schulz, for the past 2 to 3 years, he branded himself as the edgy comic and all that stuff, and now completely changed. So obviously, my expectations for Andrew Schulz were a lot higher than someone like Bert Kreischer when it comes to stand-up comedy. And also, a lot of people will argue that everything that I've said is wrong simply because he sold out MSG twice, which, you know, it is mind-blowing, but, you know, at this point, it's very clear that you don't need the best comedy or the best jokes, or you don't need to be the best comedian to sell out a massive venue.
Wow. It's a good feeling.
It's a great
feeling.
What was the coolest venue you guys have done?
The O2.
Well, obviously the O2.
O2, 100%.
Yeah.
That was
100%.
different.
How many people you had?
15,000.
Fuck.
Wow.
Yeah. That was insane.
That was sick.
That was insane. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick.
I mean, that's.
Did you walk out on the stage before anybody was there?
Yeah,
we did the pre.
That's a pretty awesome moment, right?
It was crazy.
When we walked in, like months before, when there was nothing there, just the seats, we realized how big this venue is.
I think that's something that like we always try to do on tour is like either go into the shittiest seat and look down, because that puts a lot in perspective, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at that, you're like, whoa, somebody is so excited to sit right here. I need to be so grateful that I even get to be on the fucking stage.
Yeah, literally.
And then it puts in perspective. You're like, holy shit, I used to work this shitty job, or we were making funny jokes at a chicken shop, and now we're
bro.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Like this show started off in like on his sofa, like
true.
Yeah,
5 years ago.
Yeah, no
Manchester.
studio, no nothing. Like one DSLR camera that you had to redo it every 20 minutes. Because they had the limit. Yeah, it's got the video limit. So we'd have to stop and start every 20 minutes.
So yeah, once again, nowadays it's not that surprising seeing that someone sold out a huge venue, even though they're not the best comedian or comedians at all, just YouTubers, which is pretty wild. And here's a pretty interesting piece of information, a fact that I think it's a little bit mind blowing, because if you think that Kill Tony right now is the best show on the internet, and Tony is one of the best comedians at the moment, keep in mind that Tony Hinchcliffe, with the whole Kill Tony, the show with 10 plus people and all the guests and everything that happens, he still didn't sell out or did as much noise as Andrew Schulz did with MSG, because Andrew Schulz did sell out Madison Square Garden in like 90 minutes, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. And Tony Hinchcliffe hasn't sold out yet, and the show is coming up pretty soon. So, it's pretty shocking that Andrew Schulz did all that with just Andrew Schulz, just himself, one guy. It's insane. And to be fair to Andrew Schulz, even though he has been out of control with the way he acts and thinking he's a modern-day philosopher and all that stuff, he hasn't let all the attention and money get to his head the same way that Tony Hinchcliffe did. For example, after the whole Tom Brady roast, Tony did have some very questionable appearances on shows and podcasts that made it very clear that he's definitely changed and that his ego is out of control. And with Andrew Schulz, it's the complete opposite, even though it might be fake, because once again, he is following Joe Rogan's blueprint, even to the point of being way too humble when it comes to talking about his wealth and success and all that stuff, to the point that it gets a little bit boring. I mean, just make a joke about how good it is being rich. Louis C.K. had a good joke about how he flies in first class or whatever, and he's better than everyone else, but it was only for a couple of years before he fell off, and it did happen. So that's the good thing about comedy, being able to laugh at yourself.
Really? Wait, you have a girl though, right? You guys?
No, we broke up.
Oh no way!
So you can get herpes from anywhere.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, this is fine. I thought, okay, this is when did you guys break up?
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm sorry, bro. You want to keep talking about your lip hurting?
Let's forget it. We're good.
Oh man.
Damn, dude.
When did this happen?
That's why they get the big numbers, dude. They dig deep.
Hold on, when did
He's
this
crossing
happen?
his legs, dude. It's about to get fucking
Just
Schultzy
want to
in
ask
here.
some questions.
Open up.
Dude, you're on the couch, bro. Open them up, Schultz. Do the thing.
Do the thing.
Dave will be the black guy. I'll be the long-haired dude. Facts.
No cap.
So tell us.
A couple months ago, we broke up.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Damn it, man. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, dude. I hope your lip feels better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm sorry. We can't all have amazing relationships like you. I saw his wedding
Don't
photos.
be angry at
no,
me.
I'm furious
I care
with you now.
about you.
It would have worked out with me and my girlfriend if you didn't have such a beautiful wedding that I had to live up to.
Oh,
Fucking
shit.
looking at his wedding photos with my ex,
Picture
being like,
comes out.
okay, just so you know, bitch, we're not getting married in a castle in France.
I saw
It's not
you in
happening.
Mykonos. You took her to Greece.
That was everything.
You went
I
on
had.
all the vacations. You've been everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Louis,
You spoiled this girl.
it is
You
tough.
showed her you love her.
It wasn't enough.
And then he was like, pick up after me. I took you to Mykonos.
Mykonos.
I mean, you did
I
post
don't wanna-
pictures in all white
It was
linens.
beautiful. Every look looks so beautiful, man.
No man could possibly live up to Schultz's standard that he set. So thank you for that, Schultz. We really appreciate that. Pretty incredible.
I did not expect that as support, but I really thank you very
He's
much.
like-
Can I ask who the coolest person there was? The coolest, like,
Elvis
that
Presley.
Would,
He's
that
not
would
dead.
excite, that would excite people.
My wife.
I know.
Oh.
I know the right answer.
Softies. Here we go.
But you know what I meant.
No, it's just
I'm
my
gonna
friends.
cry.
And also, seeing Andrew Schulz on the Legion of Skanks podcast was pretty cool, because I believe that was his first appearance ever since the Tom Brady roast and him selling out MSG. Well, he did call into the Fighter and the Kid podcast, but it was a Zoom call and it was pretty short. But the point is that whenever he's on podcasts like the Legion of Skanks, it reminds you that he's actually able to be a likable person and act normal. Whereas whenever he's on the Flagrant podcast on his own show, he completely morphs into a different person. And I think it is mainly because he is surrounded by yes men, and not in a bad way. Like, I'm not trying to trash Akash or anyone that's around him, but it's normal that Andrew Schulz just completely blew up to a whole different level. And even though they're all good friends, that, you know, it's part of the reason why the show did so well in the first place. But because Andrew Schulz is such in a whole different level, it's almost impossible for Akash, Alex, or Mark to tell Andrew Schulz, you know, whenever he's doing anything wrong. And so because of that, Andrew Schulz on his own show pretty much has no limits and no checks and balances. And in my opinion, I thought Luis J. Gomez did a pretty good job at, you know, pressing Andrew Schulz or calling him out in a good way, you know, with jokes, and making it a point that he has blown up so much that he's no longer relatable to any of the other comedians. Because, you know, I doubt that Akash or Mark or Alex Media would ever tell Andrew Schulz that he's no longer relatable to them. And the only time that Andrew Schulz has been called out or being made fun of on his own show has been by Shane Gillis, or the time that Whitney Cummings was on the show, which, now looking back, there is a joke that she made about Schulz, which is, it's pretty savage now that we know what Andrew Schulz was going through at that time.
And then I was like just attracted to such more like extreme, like intense people, like addicts, like motorcycles, shit
Veterinarians?
Like that.
When did you get
He
on?
was a rock climber too. He was a rock climber
Don't
too.
do that. Don't you dare do that. It's not a rock climber in the 1700s when we didn't have cables and shit.
What's going on? Did
I need to know what's going on. You come on here, you say you're a big old bull dyke out of the nowhere.
Hold on. I'm not a bull dyke.
Come on.
Did Emma take down your Die Hard poster? What's going on? What's going on at home, Andrew?
You come in.
What's going on at home?
You come in and you tell me that you're lying about something.
What's going on? Are you shooting?
I need to get to the bottom of it.
Are you shooting blanks? Why are you such a grump?
Yes. How am I grumpy?
You have some rage at me, Andrew. This is a new kind of rage.
This is a good defensive strategy. You come in here, you
Why
accuse.
do I even
This
have
is
to be
gaslighting.
defending?
This is gaslighting. Do you learn this from your lesbians?
Yes. She's been dating women now. She knows all the
now
tricks.
they know how to do it.
And it is understandable that it's a lot of pressure, you know, trying to start a family and having to struggle with it, managing a massively successful comedy career, two massively successful podcasts, and a large social media presence. And because of that, it potentially leaves no room to come up with new comedy and new ideas. But that is the exact criticism for the Rogan Sphere comedians, that, you know, they start off as good comics and all they do is focus on comedy and projects. And as soon as they blow up after meeting Joe Rogan and becoming good friends, they completely change and they stop focusing on their comedy. For example, that is exactly what happened to Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer with Two Bears, One Cave, because they essentially became so massively successful and unrelatable. And they did at some point start acting like they were better than everyone else. And so even other comedians started to dislike them and, you know, started talking about it on their own podcast.
No, it was because it was different because I genuinely felt like everyone was truly happy for you.
Oh yeah,
and
we're drinking.
It wasn't like a lot of people like, dude, like nobody's happy for Bert or Andrew Schulz.
Hey,
I love them. I think they're great, but great. They're rich and successful. Cool. It's a different thing. Like we legitimately are happy.
Now, when it comes to Andrew Schulz, even a few months ago, we did mention how, you know, I thought he was nowhere near as bad as Tom or Bert Kreischer, and that there was a lot of hope. However, after seeing that the Flagrant podcast has been definitely suffering, they started banking episodes. Andrew Schulz, and the fact that Andrew Schulz's new material, in my opinion, is not that good, you know, it only leads me to believe that he is going down that path, which is pretty sad.
The writing on the wall, Jay did all the mental math. He was like, you know what? Bert's going places. I got to protect this guy.
Listen, I only got so many chances at a Jumbotron.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, all
Bert
right?
Kreischer's
I'm
been
not
very
that
generous
different
to
than
me.
that.
Bert Kreischer's been very good to me. But she goes, and she walks off into the dark.
I've never seen you be political. Bert is very nice. He's a very good person, and
great.
We shall respect him on this show.
I would defend Bert pretty hard. Yeah, he's a good dude. He's been very good to me. But I mean, listen.
Gay.
Totally. We've also.
Oh, gay.
We've also.
What the f- was that?
We've also.
You can't make fun of Bert.
No. Do you know?
Oh my
Dude,
God.
one of the luxuries.
Am I on Legion of Skanks right now?
Yeah.
What the f- is this?
Can I tell you something?
All right,
You
the
want me to
rest
give-
of this
you want me to
episode will
give-
be the death of Bert Kreischer.
No, dude, you know what I mean? Like it was Shane's, you people. I've known you guys forever.
I'm not
so
famous.
That's not a Schultz for the love of. You just sold out Madison Square Garden twice. MGS 2 times.
2 times.
Dude, f***ing Schultz is so convincing for like a second. He's like, I'm not famous. I'm like, wait, do we have a different guy?
He goes, Schultz from the Australian amphitheaters. Yeah?
No, it's Schultz, right? Our friend Schultz got famous.
No, but tell me,
The 17-foot silhouette that walks out on the stage.
The last 15 years.
The guy who comes down on stage like Bon Jovi.
Tell me.
I forget what I was saying. I'm stoned.
You were saying that when you're around people
Yes.
that are famous.
And look, at the end of the day, I still think that Andrew Schulz is one of the best Rogan Sphere comedians, both in terms of stand-up comedy and podcasting, because especially after seeing both of them, Tom Segura and Andrew Schulz perform at the roast of Tom Brady, there is no doubt who is the better one. And so because of that, Tom Segura needs to really step it up and put out a crazy good comedy special. And that is the next point. I think the next few months or the next year will be very interesting for stand-up comedy, because a lot of these Rogan Sphere comedians are now about to put out comedy specials. I mean, more specifically, Joe Rogan is about to release a new special on Netflix. Bert Kreischer, I believe, just recorded his comedy special. Tom Segura, I'm sure, is next. Tony Hinchcliffe. And once they all get released, we will definitely see who the best one is at the moment. And if they're all bad, they definitely need to get called out, or at the very least, we need to make a distinction between a real stand-up comic and a very famous podcaster who can sell tickets and tell a story on stage. And by the way, I could be completely wrong, and maybe Andrew Schulz actually records that same material and puts it out on a comedy special and it completely blows up. It becomes the biggest and the best comedy ever. And at that point, I mean, what do I know? But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Dislike if you didn't like the video, but that is all we have for today. See ya.